Hey, welcome to Write Your Best Book. We just hopped on over here from my personal page and we're starting a new page at your request for Write Your Best Book. Here at Write Your Best Book, we're going to give you maybe daily, but at least weekly tips on how to write your best book. Everything that goes with the craft of writing, self-editing, all the way up to publishing, and even some marketing, we'll go into that here on Write Your Best Book. Today's topic, as you can see from the thumbnail, is settings and scenery. How to create the best setting for your novel. First off, you want to be sure that when you do, the last thing you want to do is start your novel with a big info dumpy scene description. Don't do that. It's tempting. You see it in some literary fiction novels, and if you're writing literary fiction, you can maybe get away with it. But in most contemporary novels, you're going to want to avoid doing that. But what you want to do instead is sprinkle, all of my TikTok followers know I love the word sprinkle that little bit of information about your setting throughout the book, but especially the first few chapters, so that the reader becomes familiar with the setting where this book is taking place. Another thing is, before you even begin to write, you need to determine where is your setting going to be. Is it going to be in a real place or a made up place? For example, if it's fantasy that you're writing, most likely you're going to make up a world or a planet or a land of some sort that we've never heard of. More on that in a moment. But it could be something real. It could be your hometown. I personally only write books that are set in a town that I either live in, have lived in, or am very familiar with, simply because, not that you can't do it the other way, but I do it because, quite frankly, I don't want to get anything wrong. I don't want to have people with pitchforks from that hometown or from that town I wrote my book in picketing and coming after me because I got the setting wrong or a landmark wrong or a detail or a fact or a date, something wrong. I don't want to do that. So I go with what I know. It's the old writing advice, write what you know. Okay, so that's if you're, but you can set it anywhere, even if you don't really know that much. If you don't know that much about the setting that you've chosen, say you want to set your story in New York City and you've never been there. You're going to have to do some research. That's another aspect to creating the perfect setting, is you may have to do a little bit of research. Hell, even if you do know the city you live in, you don't know all the facts and all the details, so you're still going to have to do a little bit of research. Okay, so we've determined, that we're going to have to do some research. We need to figure out whether it's a real or made up place. Now the next step is to figure out what is the best setting, and what you need to ask yourself first is, based on your genre and even your plot, excuse me, what is the best setting for this novel? For example, if you're going to write a sweeping historical romance, odds are you'll probably set that somewhere on a plantation in the South. If you're going to write a contemporary sweet romance, you don't have to, but you could probably want to write it in like a big city where there's parks and all kinds of places they could go, or an exotic destination. But whatever it is, just make sure it fits with your plot and your genre. You don't want them to not really make sense together. However, there's always exceptions, because who'd have ever thought that Charlaine Harris would have had such a successful set of books with vampires in Louisiana? Who'd have thunk it? But it worked. So there are no hard and fast rules, but generally you want to try to stick to what works best for your plot and for your genre. All right, so now you've determined generally where you want to set your book, and you've kind of figured that out. Hopefully you've done that before you start writing. That would be key. Now, once you do start writing, how do you write the scenery? How do you describe the scenery without being info dumpy? Well, again, you want to avoid big, long paragraphs, especially in the beginning chapters of your book, that just go on and on and on about the trees and the grass and the flowers and the trees and the buds. No, you just don't do that. Instead, as your character is walking down the street, she can observe something. There's one tidbit. And then she hears something, which is another key. Try to use as many of the 5 senses as you possibly can when you're describing your setting and your scenery, because this will create a more visceral experience for your reader. They'll be able to put themselves where you are, even if they've never been there before. All right, so, or if they've been there or they haven't been there since they were a kid. Let's say you're setting it at a park. The scene is at a park. Don't just tell me what the protagonist sees or the character sees, with bleachers and swings and a baseball field and trees and this. Don't just do that. I need to also know, what does she hear? Does she hear the crack of a baseball bat hitting a ball? Does she hear the fans cheering in the stand? Does she hear the iron creaking on the swing set? Does she, whatever, you get my point. What about smell? What does she smell? Maybe hot dogs roasting nearby, maybe beer being spilled. I mean, whatever it is, use as many of the senses as you can without info dumping, sprinkling it throughout to give us that kind of visceral experience that we can put ourselves in. And the last thing that I want to touch on is for fantasy authors specific, but it applies to everyone. With fantasy authors, you have to take it a step further. Maybe even paranormal if you're setting it in an unreal type new world. You have to go as far as to actually build your world. And that, if you're doing it right, you need to do before you even start writing. As much as you would do a character sketch or a plot outline, do a setting sketch. Go ahead and map out your world. What does the greenery look like? Is it even green to begin with? What does the plant life look like? What do the animals look like? What do the buildings look like? What does the sky look like? Write all that out. Plan it out so that when you go to write your novel and it's time to describe the setting to the reader, you already know. And you can refer back to your map that you've already, and I don't mean a map, I mean a sketch basically. And you can pick out those details, and when it's appropriate at the right time, you just sprinkle in the little bits of information about this world that you've created. Again, it's called world building, and it's crucial to fantasy writers. Okay, so that is in a nutshell what you need to do to create a perfect setting for the perfect book and make that match your genre and your plot, which is very important, and how to sprinkle the bits of information about your scenery so that you don't info dump throughout the book. All right, well, before we go, I've got a couple minutes left. I'm going to keep my videos under 10 minutes, knock on wood. But I want to remind you about our live webinar, July 24th, 7 p.m. If you have not already registered, please go do so. There are still about 60-some seats left. There were 100 to begin with. We're down to 60-something. And I want you all to be able to attend. All my followers, everybody that watches these videos and my lives, I want you to be able to attend. So please go and register. I will put a link to the registration in the notes or whatever under this video. In the comments, in the description. Also, if that doesn't work for whatever reason, you can always find us on our Facebook page, Write Your Best Book, or Instagram, Write Your Best Book. And there you can always get a link to registration. And so I want you to be able to attend it's called 3 Secrets to Writing Novels That Sell. And I'm going to walk you through the 3 most crucial elements I believe any successful novel must possess if you're going to sell more than just a few copies to friends and family. All right, guys. Well, it was good to see you for my very first, technically, for Write Your Best Book channel anyway, video. And I hope that you have a good time working on your setting. Talk soon. And in the meantime, go write your best book.